why does Aang have to die here? What is the importance of this moment? What was this season leading to? You'll hear a lot of people mention that this season is about a lot of things, and believe me, it is. But I would say Book 2 Earth is about perfection. So what is perfection in Avatar? It's absolute. It's something that feels like the only way to win. Of course, winning is something that is contextual to each character, but equally tempting. Usually, the character isn't looking for flawlessness for the sake of it. There's this underlying promise of attaining their wish they feel has to be there, which is why they put themselves through it. For Aang, it's saving the world. For Zuko, it's honor. For Azula, it's love from her father. For Toph, it's actually love from her parents as well. This concept is introduced by Book 2 in 3 ways. First, Azula. In Season 2's first episode, The Avatar State, we meet this young girl leading a military ship crew. We learn that she's all about control and perfection. In her speeches to her crew, she's exercising perfect control on everyone around her, demanding that her men refer to her orders above all, even above forces of nature.
Do the tides command this ship?
No, princess.
The standard of perfection is something Azula holds herself up to first and foremost. We see this in her training session with Lo and Lee, practicing lightning generation.
One hair out of place. Almost isn't good enough.
And later, in her talk with Iroh and Zuko, controlling the pace and flow of the conversation like a director.
Must be a family trait. Both of you so quick to get to the point.
Brother simply needs a moment.
Don't interrupt, Uncle!
Again, the show stresses to us that Azula both is and needs perfection. She embodies it above everyone else. Second is Ba Sing Se, an impenetrable city that can exist in the midst of a war with citizens who are unaware or behave as if everything is perfect. Every rule is perfectly followed, every Judy is carefully brainwashed to behave the same way. Any little imperfection, like Jet, gets quickly snuffed out in order to maintain perfect control. This is a very attractive place to someone like Azula, but we'll get to that later. Third is Toph. While the other two embody perfection, Toph is an example of someone who knows it but lives as a rejection of it. She actually parallels Azula pretty well here. Both live with the offer of perfection. For Toph, that's being the perfect daughter by accepting the role of helplessness, living as part of this clean, regal family. Being a prodigy earthbender actually breaks her from this role, ultimately leading to her refusal to be this perfectly helpless daughter. Azula, on the other hand, is the perfect daughter by avoiding helplessness at all costs, living as part of this clean, royal family. Being a prodigy firebender actually supports her in this role, ultimately leading to her embracing being this perfectly competent daughter.
Yes, you're right, Azula.
Having that established, let's go back to the opening episode of Season 2. Aang is caught in a dilemma. After the power we see demonstrated by the Avatar State defending the Northern Water Tribe, Earth Kingdom General Fong gets an idea.
With the kind of power he possesses, he could defeat the Fire Lord now! But with you leading the way, as the ultimate weapon.
Aang's pursuing his destiny his way.
While you take your time learning the elements, the war goes on. People are dying, Aang. You could end it. Now!
Aang's pressured to let go of his mission to master the elements, become a fully realized avatar, and do things the right way so they can immediately beat the Fire Lord. He complies with General Fong's tests to figure out how to trigger the Avatar State so they can use him like a glass cannon. Aang and Katara come to criticize Fong's plan and decide against it. Not because of the end result. Defeating the Fire Lord ASAP would obviously be ideal, but the way there would create problems they recognize are too costly. They prioritize a messy journey over a perfect end, deciding to go a more honest route to Aang's destiny. Azula, on the other hand, only values the end result, destination, so she doesn't mind lying, manipulating, and doing whatever is necessary to achieve it. The show's parallel between these two approaches is clear, as it's right after the scene of Aang taking control from Fong with the Avatar State that we see Azula lose control of Zuko and Iroh, as her lieutenant accidentally calls them prisoners, exposing her lies, and things break into disorder. What is the struggle with perfection for each character? For Zuko, it's coming to grips with his need to be the perfect son. We know he grows up as an untalented firebender in contrast to Azula. His weakness very much limits his ability to get approval from his father. Funny enough, what Zuko lacks in firebending, he makes up for in swordsmanship, a skill which he mainly uses against the interests of his perfect son image. He uses swords to effectively free Aang from Admiral Zhao. Swordsmanship is what he connects with the Earth Kingdom boy over and Zuko alone. His broadswords are what he uses to save the same boy later that episode. In fact, it's only when he starts using firebending in that fight that he actually reverts to proudly claiming his heritage and image as perfect prince,
Prince of the Fire Nation and heir to the throne,
which disconnects him from the family he had connected with. Later this season, living with Iroh and Ba Sing Se, we see Zuko unfulfilled with the peaceful tea shop life Iroh has carved for them. When he finds out that the Avatar is in the city, he tells Iroh that he plans to hunt him, telling Iroh,
have you ever thought that I want more from life than a nice apartment and a job serving tea?
Iroh says,
There's nothing wrong with a life of peace and prosperity.
and suggests Zuko ask himself what he wants from life, what destiny means to him. Zuko, rather than doing that, chooses the other extreme, perfection and power, committing to being the perfect son by finding the Avatar and earning the honor he lost in his father's eyes. Zuko ends up finding Appa captured and, in a moment of encouraged reflection, frees him. Here's what got really interesting for me. So, tossing away perfection by chasing honor sends Zuko into that fever,
It was in such conflict with your image of yourself.
what Iroh calls
A metamorphosis, my nephew.
When he comes to, he's eating the food that Iroh's making.
I'm sure you wouldn't like it.
It smells delicious. I'd love a bowl, Uncle.
Being incredibly patient and relaxed, and suddenly he would love nothing more than owning a tea shop with Iroh. I actually think this is also a regression in Zuko's journey. He's become the perfect nephew to Iroh, which is another opposing form of perfection to being a perfect son to Ozai, but isn't truly Zuko. We know this because the Zuko at the end of the show behaves nothing like this, which tells me that what Zuko is doing here isn't him accepting his own needs and wants over his dad's ideals, but simply swapping them out for Iroh's. Alright, here's proof.
Firebending comes from the breath, not the muscles.
Through the show, Zuko usually firebends with rage and closed fists. In Bitter Work, when he trains with Iroh, Iroh mentions how he learned to redirect lightning from the waterbenders,
The technique I am about to teach you, I learned by studying the waterbenders.
and we, along with Zuko, are introduced to the concept of borrowing bending techniques from one element to apply to another. Post-Fever Zuko, when faced with Azula, is literally bending with open palms, calmly and in water-like motions. I don't know about you, but I'd say this is a very Iroh-like way to firebend. Later, in the catacombs, Azula shows up, tempting Zuko to return to the Fire Nation.
Why don't you let him decide, Uncle?
Here, the choices may look like good versus evil, but for Zuko, it's really become Ozai's perfect son versus become Iroh's perfect nephew. As you know, Zuko chooses the Ozai route, and suddenly he's back to bending the way he always has. For Toph, it's the struggle between being a loved and helpless daughter versus being a free and powerful bender. In episode 6, The Blind Bandit, it's interesting to notice that Aang and Toph initially don't get along, and because of their contrast, Aang, in both his element and personality, is all about freedom and expression. Toph, in her element and imposed lifestyle, is rigid, controlled, and precise. In a sense, Aang's freedom and lack of limitations is all Toph has ever wanted. He's also the only opponent to ever beat her in Earth Rumble, but I'm pretty sure that match was rigged. When her parents find out the truth about their dependent, blind daughter, and Toph finally lets loose on the Rumble roster, showing off her earthbending mastery, her parents don't recognize her independence and instead double down on the need to confine her and restrict her more,
I've let you have far too much freedom.
tying her down to this easy-to-understand, perfect image of helplessness as their daughter. Toph, having broken out of that facade, can no longer pay for her parents' approval with weakness, and comes back, lying about her parents letting her go and joining the gang. For Azula, it's being the perfect, unbeatable princess. She hones her firebending, strategy, and influence to being flawless. In Season 2, we don't even really get cracks of vulnerability in her character. She's the only one who really seems to enjoy perfection for perfection's sake. From her introduction to the end of the season, she's going win for win. In Episode 1, she's practicing her lightning. By Episode 20, she lands the killing blow with it on the Avatar. In Episode 1, she's asserting her control over her Fire Nation crew. By Episode 20, she's gained that same level of control over the Dai Li agents. We can even draw a contrast to Iroh here, who comes to the Earth King's palace saying that in the past he had expected to be arriving as a conqueror, but now is here to serve, showing that for Iroh, peace and prosperity has won over power and perfection. As the one who did conquer Ba Sing Se, Azula has truly achieved power and perfection as the opposite side of this contrast. By the end of this season, it's safe to say that Azula is at her peak. For Aang, it's being in full, perfect control of the Avatar state, clearing his chakras and being the Avatar everyone knows for certain can defeat the Fire Lord. In some way or another, these characters have to come to realize that true growth is messy. Toph, being tricked by the promise of her parents' acceptance, doesn't get an ideal solution. She's put back into a metal box like in episode 6, shoved back into the position of perfectly helpless daughter. What does she do? She embraces her strength and messy self above everything. What's interesting is in that episode, Guru Patik says,
Even the separation of the four elements is an illusion.
Toph's ability to bend metal is a testament to the fact that perfection is a lie. Accepting the idea that metal is some perfect, pure element would never have let Toph bend it, but in accepting that she has been denied the perfect reality, the love of her parents and the freedom of her strength, she is able to also see the imperfections in the metal, the dirty, messy earth to bend it, which breaks her out and frees her. When Aang and Iroh are heading to the catacombs for Katara and Zuko, Aang asks for advice about ditching full mastery of the Avatar state, the right, perfect way to win, in favor of not detaching from and rescuing Katara. Iroh commends Aang on his decision, a clear callback to his conversation with Zuko earlier.
Perfection and power are overrated. I think you are very wise to choose happiness and love.
We finally get a big answer to the Season 2 puzzle when Aang asks Iroh, without that perfection,
without the Avatar state, what if I'm not powerful enough?
Iroh responds,
I don't know the answer.
Sometimes life is like this dark tunnel. You can't always see the light at the end of the tunnel.
But if you just keep moving, you will come to a better place. That's the answer. The main allure of perfection is this certainty, being sure that if he can control the Avatar state, he can defeat anyone. In order to accept imperfection, you must also accept uncertainty, because imperfection is messy. Relying on others over absolute power is messy. We can only grow when we accept our mistakes. Those are bound to happen regardless of how perfect we convince ourselves we are. Perfection always cracks eventually. So how does Aang's death fit into all this? In the finale, with Zuko choosing the Fire Nation, Aang and Katara are severely outpowered and outnumbered. Aang is surrounded, and in that moment, he relapses onto the certainty he has within perfection. He decides to detach and gain full mastery of the Avatar state in that moment, and just as he steps into the domain of perfection, he's struck down by its embodiment, Azula. Katara, the one he had moved to let go, is the one to catch him and revive him. The messy, imperfect love he had forsaken for power and perfection is what saves him in the end.